Hi, my dog lovers. This is Dr. D, and I would like to welcome you to Chapter 1 of our Health and Longevity course. If there is one thing that I would like you to learn from this course, it is actually the content of Chapter 1. So I hope you'll enjoy it and resource from it for the whole course. Whenever I ask people what they would wish for their dog if they had just one wish, pretty much everyone, including myself, answers, I would like my dog to live longer and healthier life. I know that this is easy said, but it is not as easy done. And it is my experience that most people who are really interested in their dog's well-being, they're interested in the dangers of processed food and kibble and learn how to keep their dogs safe from those, how to feed natural diet, and how to avoid drugs. But there is one more thing that is critical in keeping your dog healthy. It is super important to know what you don't know. If you ask 10 people if they eat healthy, it is very likely that maybe 8 out of 10 people will answer that they absolutely eat healthy. And then you would have a nutritionist, an expert, looking at what they eat, and he or she would conclude that only about 3 people out of the 10 eat healthy. And health is tricky because, most people have some sort of idea what is healthy and what is not, but the society has accepted certain norms, and sometimes they're not exactly what the reality is. You don't need to be a veterinarian to be your dog's best healer. You don't need to have a veterinary degree and be a doctor to actually know how to make the right decisions. With the knowledge that you acquire, sometimes you will be able to prevent disease altogether. And sometimes, if your dog gets ill, you'll be able to decide on the best options. I'm a strong believer in following nature. I believe that the best core principles of healing are in nature because nature knows how to maintain balance. Nature is the best actually there is, because every other artificial or conventional method of healing is actually not as detailed, not as finely tuned as the natural process. If you add drugs in the equation of healing, the body has to detox them, get rid of them, and also heal the body. It's like trying to clean a lake and pouring toxins in it. It doesn't really work. I know that drugs sometimes are needed, but most of the time you can avoid them. I was really surprised when I was able to reduce the use of drugs in my practice by about 90%. I didn't know that it was possible. When I started using natural healing methods, it was a real relief for me to actually see that I don't need to use toxic chemicals and that it's much easier than it seems. What I want to say is that there is nothing better to see your dog happy and playing at the age of 15 or 16, 17 years old. And it is still very rare. But I have seen that by applying a few simple principles in healing, you can actually increase your dog's life by 20, even 30%. And that's years, not just weeks and months of life. And I'm sure that you agree that this is definitely worth it. I love watching all the movies and documentaries on nature and universe because it allows me to understand how the body works. Because everything in nature and the universe is actually a cycle. Sometime I had a conversation with my brother-in-law about his business, and he says, business evolution is like a spiral. And I said, you know what? I don't think so. I think that it's always a cycle, because anything in nature is a cycle. The only difference is in the length of the cycle. The longest cycle we know is the cycle of the existence of the universe, because it started with Big Bang, at least that's what we think happened, and it started expanding, but eventually the universe will start contracting again. I love that the universal function of the actual universe is actually expansion and contraction, like the heartbeat. And when it comes to our planet Earth, we know that it has kind of recycled at least 7 times, whether it was meteorite impacts or changes in temperature and other factors that made our planet totally reset. all the life disappeared, or most of the life disappeared, and it started to rise again. And this is the cycle. And our life and the life of our dogs is also a cycle. It is much shorter cycle than the one of our planet or the sun or the universe, but it is a cycle. And we know that the end is inevitable. The only difference and the only thing that we can affect is how long the cycle is. How can we make sure that the cycle is as long as possible? Well, so many people are trying to get the quick fix. And I always tell them that healing and learning to heal is a skill like any other skill. It takes time to learn to write and read. It takes time to play music or painting or learning a second language, which I had to do. And it takes effort. It doesn't happen just like that. And the same happens, or the same applies to your dog's health. It takes time to learn how to keep his or her life long and healthy and happy and get the gift of extra time. The earth would be in absolute perfect condition if there weren't humans, if we didn't tamper with the natural process. I know that it is our nature that we love making new things and create new inventions, but if you just try to think of one man-made system that is better than the natural one, I don't think that you would find it. And I know that it is easy to say that, you know, progress is progress and that we have to make new things and all that. But I think that we came to this planet to actually realize that the best ways are already in place. And what we should do is to follow them, really listen to nature, and make sure that we apply the principles to every single part of our life. I often see that people do not understand the full effect of drugs and preservatives and chemicals on the body. Because when it comes to the primary effect of, let's say, pain control, people just see that they get better. But they do not see that if they introduce the artificial substance in the body, that there is another burden, another disease, and that's the drug disease that is caused. If you think of any artificial substance, it has an effect and then also side effects. But the side effects, in fact, are the effects of the drug. They're just put in a different box, in a different category, just to make the drug look a little better. And we are so used to reading about side effects that sometimes we ignore them and we think that they don't happen to us. But they do happen, and they happen often. And I've seen that in medicine and in the practice. And the other part that we don't really know is how drugs interact with each other. Because the interactions just can't be studied. If there is hundreds, or if there are hundreds and thousands of drugs, who can study how they interact together? So it is a big unknown. We do not know what the long-term effect of most medication is unless it's discovered by seeing some really crazy and regular pattern. But in most situations, if you have a person or dog getting cancer, we don't really know whether it was partially or fully caused by a drug, because the long-term effect is actually not studied. So the best way to maintain health at times when we don't really know everything about drugs and these artificial substances is to eliminate them as much as we can, as often as we can. And that is why I recommend a regular cleanse, whether it is of your own or your dog. Foreign substances in the environment lead to the shortening of our life cycle, of our dog's life cycle. And the way to increase the health is actually to detox and eliminate whatever is artificial, whatever does not belong in the body. Everyone understands that polluting rivers, burning fossil fuels, making mountains of plastic and garbage dumps, and overfishing and overconsuming makes Earth's cycle smaller. The same applies to our dogs, because if we feed them processed food if we use too many drugs, if we don't respect the body's natural rhythm and the needs, then the cycle will be shorter. It's not any different than polluting the planet with chemicals. Drugs are chemicals. Drugs are what is foreign to the body, and it takes energy and effort to actually get rid of them. So toxins and poor food definitely leads to shorter life. And I can imagine that at least a few of you will think, well, I know my grandma smoked and she lived until she was 95. And I know that that is possible, but it is very unlikely. And if you want to try to find an excuse why you shouldn't be learning more and learning what you don't know, maybe it's just not the time. But I got used to that, and I'm not really upset with people who say, I don't want to learn right now. I just want to feed my dog kibble, and I want to use drugs because I don't have time and I'm busy and I have kids and family, and I understand that. But for those of you who want to learn better, more natural approach to healthcare, I am here, and I hope that you will enjoy the following chapters and the information that I'll give you here. I know that most of you understand that when it comes to your dog's health, it is important to feed good food and avoid drugs and toxins. But it's also important to know where these toxins and chemicals come from. And several years back, I started using hair testing, and I discovered that, for example, arsenic comes from rice, that lead comes from some toys, dog toys, and that mercury comes from fish. And I've seen some situations where groups of dogs had certain medical problems like seizures, and then I discovered that the dogs that have seizures actually have higher levels of mercury in the body. And there are so many medical conditions that quite often we can see connections. But in order to see the connections, there is one thing that you have to have, and that is open mind and know what you don't know. Why am I doing this? Well, in the course of my practice, I felt that I can help the individual patients who come to the office, but I used to see so many dogs that I couldn't help at all because I had limited amount of time, meaning I walk in the park and I see dogs that are injured, dogs that have skin disease, dogs that have chronic diarrhea and problems, and I learned about them, and I felt like I needed to invent or come up with some sort of way of helping as many dogs as possible. So these courses and the fact that I give them for free is something that I really enjoy because it's like a medicine for all the frustration over the years. I hope that you enjoyed chapter 1 and that you will share it with others, and I'm looking forward to see at chapter 2. Take care and have a nice day.